T-Dog, J-Boy, and me, I'm Lugs. Our pride and joy is pumping our mugs. Be careful, kids, it could get rough. We're flipping our lids on sports and other stuff.
Welcome to Sport Weasel Central, coming to you from Saskatchewan. I'm Lugs.
I'm J-Boy from a undisclosed location.
I'm T-Dog. I'm just coming from my bedroom.
Okay, this is Sports and Other Stuff. Pre-recorded before a live studio audience. Huh? Headlines: college football is disappearing. The NBA bubble. And we'll have an NFC North preview. We'll break it down. The Big Ten will not play football in the fall, with the possibility of completing competition in the spring due to health concerns related to the coronavirus pandemic. Shortly after that announcement came word the Pac-12 unanimously voted to do the same. The dominoes are starting to fall, gents, one by one.
Yeah, I think we can say goodbye to college football for this period until there's some sort of vaccine or this thing goes away of its own accord. My question is, what happens to all those full scholarship athletes? Do they lose their scholarships? What happens in that case? And I'd heard that they were talking about an extra year of eligibility, but who knows at this point? So I don't think it's going to happen at all personally for any of even the SEC. They're holding off, but I don't think they can justify it.
I guess, and I could be wrong because obviously I haven't heard of anyone getting rid of scholarships. I think they're still going to be able to attend classes. They're not going to pull scholarships. I mean, I think just from a PR standpoint, I don't think they're willing to pull the trigger on that. In regards to the extra eligibility, I don't know about that one either. It sounds like from articles that I read on ESPN and mainly also The Athletic, it seems like at least with the MAC and I guess more specifically with the Big Ten, it came down to I'm going to try to say this correctly. The myocarditis, the inflammation of the heart muscle, which is one of the possible side effects with younger people primarily who contract it, and it can create an inflammation of the heart muscle, which it can, if untreated, can damage the heart and then possibly cause sudden cardiac arrest. So I'm not saying they aren't legitimately worrying about the kids. I think they are, but also from a liability standpoint and then possibly a class action lawsuit, they're trying to avoid that situation from ever happening.
Plus amplified if you're overweight, right? And let's look at your linemen in a college football Power 5 conference game.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of just fascinating though. It was literally almost like a week ago, or was it 2 weeks ago, where they announced their own conference only scheduling, and then 2 weeks later, it sounds like mainly they had a medical advisory board, and they essentially across the board said no, you can't have a season.
So what about the SEC and the ACC?
It's kind of the NCAA is not showing very much leadership because there's no standardized sort of ruling for these things. You know, who will be in quarantine, who won't, the testing procedures and all of that. I don't know that college and universities can afford testing like they do for professional athletes. But I think what comes down to is the NCAA is caught in a corner here because they've always maintained that college athletes are amateurs, so they can't bring up the fact that they're going to be losing a boatload of money because then that says these are employees. So I think they're just in that sort of quagmire with that. But bottom line, ACC, SEC, they're going to follow suit here because you can't control the other team if there are no particular rules in place. You don't know what they're doing. I don't say you can justify it.
Yeah, I think ACC of the Power Five is the next probably to fold up tent, and I think I think after that it'll be Big 12, and SEC will be the last to decide to end the season. And kind of going back to what Lugs was saying, and obviously I guess they kind of backtracked for this, kind of like what he was saying in terms of like treating them like workers. When it was going around, they had certain players sign, liability, essentially documents. And then a lot of schools are like, no, get rid of that. We don't want that to be a part of any of this, because essentially, yeah, kind of what Lugs is saying is you're essentially indicating that they're an employer, an employee, and not an athlete, a scholar athlete. So
2 questions. Doesn't this really point out there really is no governing body for college football?
And that's what they want, though.
No.
I mean, they don't want an overseer because if there is an overseer, then they have to divide the money equally, and none of the Power Five wanted to have any of their money be divided equally among all the other smaller tier schools. So,
yeah, and mainly I think, especially the SEC, because the SEC group knows that they make the money, period. I mean, you've got some other schools, but SEC, those games, those are the marquee games. But I will say, I just saw an article about the actual fact that some players were saying that their coaches were turning in bogus paperwork, saying they had no positives when they did. So, it's like the main one that I saw was Colorado State. So who do you trust in this? And what there is no recourse.
Well, and locally,
at all.
the story about the kid from Eastern Kentucky University, the kicker, just walking away because he witnessed so many things he couldn't believe from a protocol standpoint. He said, "I'm not going to be involved with that."
Yeah. And with the Big Ten, the freshman offensive lineman Brad Feeney, his mother, she posted that she had that post on Facebook that's essentially gone national. It's been covered everywhere, where essentially from what she's saying, and I'm not saying that she even feels that they did everything right, and he still caught it. So, and obviously he might have these heart complications now at like the age of like 18 or whatever. So it's a lot of things to worry about. I just want to say, to me, on a lighter side of it, I find it funny that when Big Ten initially kind of sent out feelers that they're closing up, that the head coach of Nebraska, Frost, decided to be like, well, if we don't have a season, we're going to try to schedule games. Like, well, good luck scheduling games.
He went rogue, right?
Everyone's locked into their own conference. They're not going to add another game. And also, I just find that very nice of him, considering, I mean, I hate to say this because I enjoyed like Tommy Frazier and Dominican Sue. Nebraska right now is a doormat. So all you're going to do is opening up, giving W's to random teams across the country.
So I guess they're ready to get on the team bus and just start driving south and pull off the different college towns and say, can we get a game with you guys? What was that about?
I don't know. The one thing I do like about this from a lighter side, and obviously I guess you could still say scary side, is like you see how psychotic these coaches are.
I think because of COVID and the sort of bungling that's gone on, it gives the players much more leverage now. I think there will be talk about having to pay these guys, and I've always been in favor of that anyway. But there's just so much. The coaches aren't going to wield the kind of power that they have in the past. I just think the players are going to organize themselves.
One of the interesting things that might come out of this that has been kind of talked about by some of the top players who talked about how they want to play is there might become, a player, not a union, but essentially a group where they'll have some voice at the table. I don't know how strong that voice can be when everyone's coming in and out every 4 or 5 years. There's there's not someone who's there to be a leader for long-term control. So I don't know how effective it'll be, but at least it feels like there's at least a movement for that. So
the big
and they can help like recruits that are being brought in. They can give them the true look at what's going on, and I just think it does give the players more leverage now. Whether they can manage that, who knows?
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to a Saturday afternoon of watching maybe the Gateway Conference, FCS football, maybe. I don't know, Northern Iowa versus South Dakota State, maybe. But here's what I'm thinking about. Take football out of this equation. Think of the revenue loss by the 4 big networks and ESPN. It's catastrophic.
Yeah.
It's major.
Oh, yeah.
And it's real money that they're losing. And it's just another nail in the coffin for the pandemic. I mean, wow.
Well, I saw the last number I saw was that CBS would lose $2.5 billion if they lost college football. And ESPN, you got to know, is going to just lose a chunk of change, which also further puts the nail in the coffin of the Disney company. I saw numbers on Disney where they had lost 85% of their merchandising money. And the only thing that was keeping them going really was Disney Plus. And that's why they put out the live version of Mulan. Was $30 a pop to see that. They're trying to figure out how to make some money. I mean, they're losing billions worldwide. It's going to, the next couple of years are going to be bizarre, I think, financially.
I guess my last thing I'll say that Lugs really pointed on, and I think would you all agree, like probably for ESPN, not obviously they have their hands on a lot of pies, but college football is probably easily their biggest money getter because that's the one where they air the most games and probably have the best ratings per game that they show.
All right, well, that's that. We'll see what happens, but you got to believe the others will fall in line, and by the time this broadcast airs, it'll probably all complete anyway. All right, should we move on to our second topic? What at first seemed to be a ridiculous concept when introduced months ago, now about a month into it, the NBA bubble is wacky, but it's a viable solution. Question, is it working, and do you like it?
I got to say, I find the screen distracting. It's not sports as I've come to know it, but it is entertaining. I'll give it that.
I think the thing I like about it, and I know they can't do it, is the nice thing they introduced is they cut out like the bottom 8 teams, and it just kind of shows you. And I know they can't go back to this. Kind of shows you and this is sports in general, they overexpanded. Like for the most part, I'm not saying there aren't some teams in the bubble that shouldn't be there, but like you got 22 teams that are all kind of intriguing in some ways, where like those other 8 teams didn't really add a lot, and it's just a better product, I think, without them. So
if you're a player, would you rather be on one of those 8 teams that's not in? I mean, for your own sake.
Yeah.
I think I'd want my money.
No matter what. Show me the money.
I mean, show me the money, man.
Well, I don't know. It depends on I think it's one of those things that depends on your mindset. Like, obviously, like if you're burnt out on your team, yeah, it's perfect. You're like, or you hate like all your teammates. You're like, I don't want to be right next to them for months on end and no escape. Where, some people like focus better by diving into their work.